I think it's safe to say that 2019 has been a pretty interesting year in tech, especially for smartphones. Around this time last year, folding displays, ultrasonic fingerprint scanners, and whatever this is supposed to be were unseen to the world of tech, but now we see them in many of today's most popular smartphones. This year brought us with all types of new, yet different smartphones from different manufacturers. And with 2019 seeing its end in just a couple days, I think it'll be a little cool just to look back at some of this year's most notable devices and see what categories they fall in. Without much left to say, this is the Smartphone Awards Assembly 2019 edition. You're watching The Gizmo Show, and without further ado, this video starts now. Kicking off the video, let's get to our first award, and that is the Most Hyped Phone of 2019 award. Now, 2019 was bound to be an interesting year for smartphones, and that's because we had a lot of phones to look forward to this year, like the iPhone 11s and the new Galaxy Notes. But if there's one phone that I think got tech enthusiasts excited for this year, it's the Galaxy S10. Now, the Galaxy S series is sort of like the face of Samsung, despite the Galaxy Note being, in theory, better. The first device to bear the Galaxy S name was among the first 5 smartphones Samsung released running Android. And to see the series still up and running after 10 years, even after Samsung's other smartphone lineups had died down, was truly special to longtime Samsung users. The smartphone was also rumored to bring some pretty neat tech that was either new or unheard of to smartphones, which I think added further to the device's early popularity. Next up on the list, we have the Best Camera Award. Now, I'm pretty sure you already had an idea of what phones would reserve themselves a spot here. But in case you weren't already sure, yeah, it's the new Google Pixels. Since the Pixel 2, Google Pixel phones have been reputable for their exceptional cameras and photography. And no, these phones don't have 108 megapixel camera sensors or anything, but they'd probably perform just as good. The Google Pixel 3a, coming in at just under $400, offered one of the best cameras at the time, showing us that you don't always have to pay top dollar for the top tech. With the Google Pixel 4, Google started taking their camera game a little more seriously, offering a main 16 megapixel lens along with a 12.2 megapixel telephoto lens. Apple also stepped up their camera game with the new iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max, adding those two phones to this category. Now, Apple offered a triple camera setup featuring a 12 megapixel main shooter with OIS, a 12 megapixel telephoto camera also featuring OIS, and another 12 megapixel ultra wide camera with a 120-degree field of view. Huawei also reserves their Mate 30 Pro a spot on this list with its 40 megapixel main shooter, 8 megapixel telephoto lens, 40 megapixel ultra wide lens, and 3D time of flight sensor. With that out of the way, let's move on to the third award, the Most Underrated Smartphone Award. This year, we got a little more smartphones than we normally would have, especially from companies like Samsung and Google. And with the overpopulation of smartphones, some devices get to enjoy all the spotlight, while others, well, don't. And the Galaxy S10e is a great example of this. Now, I honestly am confused as to why the Galaxy S10e never really kicked off, at least how Samsung had expected. For $750, this was a pretty solid phone. It outspecced the iPhone XR, which was the phone's main rival. The device brought forth a 1080p AMOLED panel, dual cameras, and a bigger battery, all of which the iPhone XR couldn't offer. The main reason why some tech enthusiasts think this smartphone never managed to kick off was that it came with a rather small screen. Offering a 5.8-inch display, it clearly didn't have the biggest screen out there, especially compared to the iPhone XR, which had a 6.1-inch screen. In general, however, the Galaxy S10e was a decent phone. It may not have been as good as its bigger brothers, but regardless, it was the perfect new phone for someone who just really wanted to hold on to the extra $150. Moving on down the list, we have our next award, the Most Overrated Device Award. Now, for every one of those not-so-popular smartphones, there's always the over-famed smartphone that, in many cases, isn't much deserving of its popularity. Now, with so many different smartphones on the market, which one could I possibly be referencing? It's the Galaxy Note 10. There's literally no other way of putting it. Now, from a general perspective, the phone did pretty well. It is a Note, so there are those high-end specs that you wouldn't really get on most other phones. But there are some areas that just make the Galaxy Note 10 a sad disappointment. The main one being the noticeable nosedive that the Galaxy Note 10 took in terms of battery capacity. Now, if you don't know what I mean, just compare the Galaxy Note 9's 4000 mAh battery to the Note 10's 3500 mAh battery. The sad part about this, however, is the fact that Samsung went out of their way to remove useful ports and other add-ons so that there would be more quote-unquote space for a bigger battery. Yeah, sure, let's believe that. Need I remind you that the Note 9 features both a headphone jack and an SD card slot and still manages to offer a 4000 mAh battery while still virtually being the same size as the Note 10. And I know that some of you are already in the comments section right now saying, "Oh, but the Galaxy Note 10 has a better haptic motor now." But let's be real here for a sec. Are you trying to tell me that this tiny little thing right here takes up more space than both the SD card slot and the headphone jack and is big enough to reduce the battery capacity by nearly 13%? I don't buy it. Whew, glad that's out of the way. Carrying on to our next award, the Most Improved Phone Award. Smartphones are all generally the same nowadays, with most smartphones ditching the headphone jack, going bezel-less, switching to OLED, and even adding more cameras to the scene. Smartphones are generally the same both in and out. But there are a few smartphones out there that have seen notable improvements from their predecessors and are bringing some of the best tech there is to offer. And the main winner for this category is without a doubt the Galaxy S10. Putting both the S10 and last year's S9 side by side, you'll already begin to notice the differences. And the improvements don't just stop at design. The S10 offers a slew of improvements, including 2 new cameras, the punch hole display, the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner, reverse wireless charging, a bigger battery, along with many others. Another phone that I think saw some really interesting improvements was the Huawei Mate 30. Now the Mate 20, last year's flagship, was by all means a solid phone, but there's always room for improvement. And the Mate 30 gives us these improvements by offering an OLED in favor of an LCD, a bigger battery, a better camera, along with normal improvements like a processor upgrade that you'd expect with a new phone. On with the next award, the Ugly Child Award. Ever since the iPhone 11 started leaking in January, we knew that 2019 wasn't going to bring us the best looking phones. And with the new Galaxy S11 leaks, things don't look like they're going to get any better. Now, you probably already knew from the get-go which phone took the win for this category, and yes, it is the new iPhone 11s. Now, being perfectly honest here, I think it's safe to say that I've gotten used to this camera setup design. I mean, it definitely doesn't make me want to puke every time I see it. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that Apple kind of got lazy this year. Yeah, I know Johnny Ive left the company about halfway through the year, so a new approach in terms of design was to be expected. But come on, Apple. You can't possibly look me straight in the face and tell me that this is the absolute best design you could come up with. But alas, this isn't the only phone here getting this award. The Nokia 9 PureView is another one of those phones that could have benefited greatly from a little more design effort. The Nokia 9 PureView, while focusing heavily on its pentalens camera system, clearly couldn't care less about design. It's as if Nokia brought in a kindergartner to design the phone for them. While the PureView offers a total of 7 cameras, I'd only be wrong not to call this the ugliest smartphone of 2019, and yes, even uglier than the new iPhone 11s. But there's yet another phone which gets this award. Now, this is a less popular device, and I'm pretty sure you haven't heard of it before. I actually just found out about this phone yesterday while I was editing, and it's called the Motorola One Zoom. Now this phone, just like the PureView, focuses mainly on its quad camera system. But also like the PureView, it looks hideous. And this is starting to become sort of like a trade-off here. If you want a good camera, you buy an ugly phone. If you want a good-looking phone, you can get one, but it won't have that good of a camera. And I'm not really sure this should be the case. Carrying on to our next award, the Odd One Out Award. I've mentioned this before, but smartphones have gained a reputation for all generally being the same. For the most part, you can expect the same few things from any smartphone you pick and choose. And this is why doing something different every once in a while might just be more important than it seems. So if there's any smartphone out there that manages to set itself apart from the competition, it's undoubtedly the Galaxy Fold. Now, ever since we started hearing word that Samsung was making a foldable phone, I've never really been a fan of the idea. And 2019 has definitely not been able to change my opinion. If you ask me, the idea that people will actually pivot to and use foldables as their day-to-day devices is flawed. And as long as smartphone companies continue to persist with the idea, they'll only continue to fail. But if there's one thing that the Galaxy Fold is good at, it's staying unique. It's not every day that you'll see a device that can transform from a phone to a tablet or vice versa. It's also important to note that Samsung is the only smartphone company that promised a foldable device to actually deliver one this year, making the phone even more unique as a product. Now on to our last award for 2019, Best Poor Man's Phone Award. Oftentimes, people don't have the money or aren't willing to spend $1,000 on a new smartphone every 6 to 12 months. Thankfully, there are cheaper smartphones out there that offer decent or even exceptional technology for what they cost. Now, if there's any smartphone that deserves this award, it's definitely the Redmi K20 Pro. Now, this device retails for around $300, with some variants costing more. But for 3 Benjamins, you're getting some pretty sweet tech that even the most expensive iPhone or Galaxy Note don't even bring to the table. So to start things off, there's no notch, which is pretty neat. You're getting a pop-up camera, a 6.4-inch 1080p OLED panel, a 48-megapixel main camera, more megapixels than the Galaxy Note 10 and iPhone 11 Pro Max, a 4000 mAh battery, also more than the Note 10 and 11 Pro Max. This phone also offers up to 256 gigabytes of non-expandable storage, 6 or 8 gigs of RAM, an in-display fingerprint scanner, Snapdragon 855, and a headphone jack. You don't see that a lot nowadays. These specs put the phone on par or even crush a lot of today's $1,000 flagships. And if you asked me what the best budget phone of 2019 was, I'd most likely hand you this phone. But that concludes this year's Smartphone Awards assembly. So, did you see some of your favorite phones get a mention here? Maybe you had some of your own picks for these categories. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, this has been The Gizmo Show. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.